I heard some great conversations over lunch, and had one right before we came down here, and folks were asking about, well, they're just asking so many things, and I have a lot of things I'd love to share, but I think that these two folks have so much to share in terms of their story and what they're doing that I'd like you to hear from them. And so later, I hope that you'll take advantage of the time that we have this evening and tomorrow morning if you'd like to have a further conversation with me. So we'd like to begin first with Chris.
Hello. How you guys doing? Good. Awesome. So my name is Chris Palma. I'm from Houston, Texas, and I was raised in Austin, but then we moved to Missouri, and that's where I spent the rest of my high school career from sophomore to senior year. And that's when I really got involved in the youth ministry program there in the Diocese of West Missouri. And it was a great thing because I was a leader, and I was doing all these great things, and we were building this community and building all these relationships. But what I kept hearing was the after effect of youth ministry, what happens after high school. And it was kind of a disaster. I heard all these horror stories about people leaving, about people being lost and never being able to come back. So in the summer, I was given the opportunity to become a peer minister by Beth Marshall, and she said, you know, you're doing a lot of great things with youth ministry, and I want you to continue. I want you to go into campus ministry, and I know you're going to Missouri State University, and there's already a campus ministry there, so I want you to continue and kind of enhance what they're doing there. And I was like, all right, that sounds like what I want to do. It sounds like an avenue I would like to explore to kind of build something and kind of build a gap between youth and young adult life for students. And so I went to college, and this is my freshman year, and I found myself kind of exploring and seeing what was there. And so I went to the campus ministry, and I talked with the campus minister, and I was like, hey, like, my name is Chris, like, nice to meet you. What kind of things have you been going through and stuff like that? And he told me all these stories and stuff, and I was like, okay. So then I waited for 3 weeks to see, like, who would come if they had a core group and stuff like that, and no one came. And I was just baffled, and I was like, what happened to all these great stories that you had? And he's like, well, I'm here. There's food on the table, and our doors are open. And I was like, and he's like, that's it. And he's like, well, most of the people that come usually find us, and we don't really have to find them. And at that moment, I was just kind of torn apart, and I was like, we just can't do that. And that's where I kind of found a lot more history about, you know, what has happened in campus ministry, where we just kind of wait for people to come to us. And so I decided that in Springfield, Missouri, that we weren't going to do that, and we're going to be outgoing. We're going to go and talk to students, and we're going to have face-to-face contact, and we're going to create relationships. So I had this scholarship that I received. It was the Multicultural Leadership Scholarship, and it's about the most diverse group on campus. Our campus at Missouri State University has 90% white and then 10% other, and there's about 2% Latino. So there's little of us. So coming to this Multicultural Leadership Scholar meeting that we have monthly was a big thing for everyone, because it was this community that you don't really see on campus, that you don't really see in your classrooms. And so from that, I decided that we need to take that to campus ministry, because I went to different campus ministries, and I didn't see that diversity either. And I was like, there has to be something different. We have to stop and really think about what's going on here. And so from there on, I made connections with students, and we talked about the same problems, because I was a student too, and I was going through the same things that they were. And so I invited them to come to campus ministry, to Canterbury Club, and to come talk about what they're feeling, about the problems that they're facing and stuff like that. And so from there on, we've really created a lot of relationships with a lot of different student organizations. And let's see. Sorry, like I'm trying to get this ready. And so and then we also found a Lutheran chaplain who decided to come one night and saw what we were doing, and he's like, I'm really interested in what you're doing. I work a lot with international students, and I think they would really enjoy this. And so with a plus of Latinos there and Asian Americans and African Americans and the people that we had these international students come in. And so we had this amazing vibe of all these different, not just cultures, but the same like denominations and religions come in and chat and talk. And so it was just really amazing to see what the difference is from, staying in and waiting for people to come and going out and speaking to people. And so I kind of figured out with the Latino part of it that it was a lot about community, about like the familia. It was all about those relationships. And if we weren't able to create those one-on-one relationships and create that environment for everyone, no one was going to come. And so I think that was something that I figured out, that it's not about like just like being Latino or being African American. It's about like finding your story and listening to that story. And it's something that we've been talking about during this conference, and really engaging in that, and not having to like really say like, I know where you're at, but to at least understand like, I know what you're going through, I think, and I know someone else, and I think we can come at the table and come talk together. And so a big part of the ministry that we have going on is about diversity and about bringing people together to really, talk about those issues. So.
Thanks. And Chris, can you tell us about how, this is a 2-year-old program?
Yeah, this is 2 years.
You have about?
We have about 25 students come in on a regular basis, and it's usually a different, one set of 25 come this week, another set of 25 come this other week. And so it's always 25, but it's always a new set of group, which is also interesting to really see happening in the ministry. But we do have our seven set foundation of people that come regularly. So.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay.
If you guys don't mind, I'd like to
Roberto.
start with prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this conference, God, for us to be able to come here together and talk about these issues, talk about what it looks like for the future of the church as the demographics are changing and the people we're missioning towards are changing, Lord, and that you're already doing the work, God, and that you've allowed us to come and be a part of it. So thank you for that, God, and thank you for this place and this opportunity, this time for us to figure it out together. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So I am Roberto Celis, or Roberto Celis. Kind of depends when you met me. I would give you one of two answers, and a lot to what Anthony was talking about this morning is what I lived into. I grew up in New Jersey, and first person in my family born in this country, and quickly assimilated to actually trying to be Bob for a little while. That did not work. My dad was not happy. And then, so just, growing up in that way, I wish I could tell more about myself. I think it's a pretty great story, but it's another day. But at 17, I kind of realized I have an opportunity to learn to know 2 languages, so kind of Spanish came back into the mix. I traveled to Latin America for a year and was able to start saying Roberto, and it was great. I went to school in Virginia. That's where I grew up in the church, but kind of found the Episcopal church in college. First time I had a priest, I was like under the age of 75. He was 30, he was cool. And just got into it. And remembering that I loved a lot of what the Episcopal church did, a lot of mission, a lot of food, but we didn't really talk about Jesus. It was one of those things where he kind of came up, not always. And just when we were about to hit our stride, I was going to be student chaplain, beginning of my senior year, Jason, the priest, decides to get married and move to San Antonio. So I'm like, crap, what do you do now? So the next couple of years didn't really pan out as hoped for, but I got a call in 2010 saying, hey, it's Jason. I'm like, hey, Jason, how you doing? He's like, good. I've been thinking about you. I want you to come to San Antonio and do a college ministry. I just graduated from college with a BFA in furniture design and a BS in psychology. Both degrees you can't do anything with. So I was like, that sounds great. I'm like, I want to go, do this something for a couple months. Can I start in January? He's like, yeah. So I'm like, all right, we're in. Come November, hey, Jason. Hey, Roberto. Okay, he calls me Roberto. No funding, sorry. So I'm like, what do I do now? Crazy, I ended up in Indiana for a couple of years, and that's where my faith really grew. So this idea of like still being stuck between Roberto and Roberto started to be lost because my identity was finally in Christ. Like being Christian my whole life, not really knowing what that meant. But now I'm like, all right, I've been adjuncting at this school, can't really live off an adjuncting salary, what do you do next? And I applied to get my MFA, and I was going to go to either school in Portland or Cincinnati. And then I was like, well, I guess I can apply to UTSA. I don't know why, but I guess I just should. I get my acceptance letters, I get into all these schools, and Cincinnati offered me a full ride. I'm like, that's it, I'm going to Cincinnati. And a week before I have to decide, I get another phone call from Jason. I'm like, Jason, why do you keep calling me at these most opportune moments? And he's like, I got you a job, we're flying you in for an interview. I'm like, that sucks, you're too late. I'm going to Cincinnati. He's like, I don't know, come to the interview. So I'm like, all right. So I go to the interview, fall in love with San Antonio, fall in love with the program, but I'm still not sure. But short story quick, I wish I could talk forever. I ended up at UTSA, starting this college ministry. And they're like, so it's really great program. It's called Vital University Ministries. And I had two people that were already working in San Antonio. One's at St. Mary's University, and the other was at Incarnate Word. And they're like, we have a push from the diocese. We want to really kind of give in to, or live into college students and young adults. We want to send you to UTSA. We've never been on that campus. We know 4 students. Good luck. I'm like, this sounds awesome. This is perfect. No, that's not exactly what I thought. So I meet with these 4 students, and they're all kind of grew up in the Episcopal Church. And if any of you could guess, after the first week, one wanted to do something. So I had one student, and like any good Latino, I put on my soccer cleats and I went to the soccer field because I'm like, all right, this stinks. I need to get this frustration out. And in those 2 years in Indiana, I learned how to pray. I learned how to allow God to really work and move. And I was like, all right, God, like, I'm here. You're already here. You're already working here. You've kind of allowed me to come and be part of that. And after playing soccer, I met 2 kids who were interested in the college ministry. So then we had 3. The next day, in my art class, I met a girl that wanted to do something. And then I started going to this church, and another girl that was going to UTSA, she's like, oh, that sounds great. So all of a sudden, we had 5 students after 2 weeks. I was like, all right, I got 5 students. Let's get to know each other. If we really want to build the ministry, first thing we got to do is build a relationship with each other. And it was great because, I mean, that's what we believe, right? Telling stories, learning about each other, learning relationships. So for those first few months, that's what we did. We ate together, we hung out together. Used to play a lot of racquetball with this one guy, and it was just a lot of fun because that's what we got to do. And because I'm in San Antonio, 60% of the population is Latino, I kind of fell into a few Latinos as well, and a couple of students were from African or black, and it was just great because we just learned to live with each other and become friends. But I'm like, all right, guys, we can't just keep doing this. There's 30,000 students here, and after my figures, about 1,000 of them were part of some sort of college ministry on campus. So that leaves like 29,000 people that we can kind of find and go to. So little by little, they kind of found enough confidence in me and each other, and they started bringing their friends. And then it started growing kind of I'm part-time, so it's kind of a slower rate, and after a year and a half, we had about 25 coming. And then I realized, I mean, there's some really great things happening here. We're getting to know each other, but there's still a lot missing. And this idea, like, if we're actually going to be rooted, if my identity is now rooted in Christ, I'm just not sure if theirs are yet. And what does that mean? So we did a study on love and understanding what does it mean to love. And we did a Rob Bell video for Song of Psalms. Kind of started out a little exciting, so they got excited about it. And then we started talking about loving yourself as you love your neighbor. And so what does it mean to love your neighbor as you love yourself? So it's like, oh, that means you kind of got to love yourself. So then what does it mean to love yourself? So this is a story I'm telling now about Marcus. So Marcus is this kind of big guy. He was a military brat, and he had just come from Germany, and he actually wasn't in school at this time. So we just find all sorts of students. I'm really into what's going on at UC Pembroke because that's what we're talking about. Throw those seeds out and see what happens. And so they were coming, and we started talking about love. And what does it actually mean to love yourself? And then this idea of forgiveness started arising, like, how do you love yourself if you haven't forgiven either yourself or others? So I think we were doing a really good job of creating this ministry, this place where everything was open. There's no conversation we couldn't have. We knew about each other. We broke bread together. We did all these things, and this ability just to be real with each other was kind of starting to create. And I'm like, all right, let's run with this. And we did this amazing night where we just opened up and talked about who have we not forgiven? Because again, like these kids' identities, and you could see it in them where like he was like, you're kind of really strong black guy, and he kind of wanted to play that role. He was funny. He could tell jokes. He was a good-looking guy, so the girls liked talking to him, and he really liked playing that role. And we had this night, and he's like, I can't forgive my dad. He never loved me. And then this other girl goes, I can't forgive my dad. And then she was white, and he's black, right? And then, so when I was young, my father passed away, and it's a little bit different, but like there's this weird forgiveness that I haven't really figured out yet. And then we just kind of met in this place together, the three of us, and we just realized our identity is now really being rooted in Christ, because we're opening up to each other and we're sharing this stuff, and we've realized that there's something missing in our life, right? This love that we've wished we've had this whole time, but that's the love that Christ offers us and honors us with. So it's just like this ministry has never been about numbers. It's never been about a certain student. But we actually call it college missions. It's not a ministry, it's a mission. We look at the campus as a mission field. Like all these young people that need Christ, they need God in their life. And how do we do it together? So these amazing conversations are able to happen. And it was great because now you see Marcus, and he's coming to Bible study, he's answering all the questions. He's into it. He kind of let go a little bit of that strong, hard guy he had to be, because he realized he's not the only one that feels a certain way. And then, so I guess, like, kind of tying it back to this idea of identity, of who we are as a ministry now, as an Episcopal church. Right? The students, what students are not an option? Where I feel like a lot of times, a lot of our ministries are based in this place, like, we'll sow our seeds on the path because we know who we can get. We know that high school kid that's been in church, and we can give him pizza and he'll be there. Or we can, place a ring and he'll be there, but it's like, what happens when we start throwing those seeds everywhere and saying, I don't know why you're coming, but I know we can get to know each other. And I know that this ministry, this mission is for you, and God's already doing something there. So it's just super exciting. My people I'm working with finally kind of took notice. They're giving me 2 interns this year, and it's going to take off. It's really exciting. It's just as great of just knowing that God's working there. So really, we don't have to do that much. Pretty much just staying out of the way. It's great.
Thank you. Okay, we've got time for some questions. Yes. Hi.
What is the student population like? Oh, sorry. What is the student population like at San Antonio University?
At UTSA, it's about 60% Latino, I think like 30% white, and then 10% kind of everything else.
And how many students?
About 30, I think it's like 32,000. So there's a few big evangelical kind of college ministries.
So how many would you say are first-generation college?
There's actually quite a few of them are first-generation college. And it's a really great thing to kind of work through that. One of the issues with UTSA, it's still somewhat of a commuter school. So every 2 years, like, my 3 best students have all left me. So but it's like, all right, God, like, so one of them actually going to one of our other universities. We're starting a ministry this year. So she gets to be part of that piece, which is really exciting for us.
Thank you both for your stories. And I'm wondering, so I worked in student affairs for a lot of years. Worked in multicultural affairs. At one time was a student of color on a college campus. So I think I would love for you all to share with the group. Oftentimes it feels like our ministries are very segregated, right? Mm-hmm. How do you attract students of color? I mean, I felt like as a student of color, and many students of color on our campus, like that was for white kids. It felt very much like you don't want us there. It's not welcoming. Yeah. And so what would you say would be good advice in trying to break some of that down?
Yeah,
because you're making it happen, and I'm just so pumped to hear it.
Yeah, it's funny because at Missouri State University, it's a really weird way the buildings have been made and where all the offices are. And somehow all the multicultural offices are either in a basement, hidden behind like this random tree that's like off campus. And so it's a big joke on campus that like, oh yeah, they really care about this, right? Because we're like, our offices are like nowhere to be seen, you know? Like how are we as like a Latino or African American student like supposed to connect? And so I think a big thing that I've done is kind of, not for just campus ministry, but also for that multicultural office and stuff like that, for students to feel like they're welcomed here, is just have that face-to-face contact with students and be like, hey, like, hi, my name is Chris Palma, like, I'm part of this ministry and stuff like that, and tell me about your story, and tell me about what's going on and stuff like that. And so then something triggers, and I'm like, you know, I have a few friends in like this office that I think that would really help you in the search, because what you find in campus ministry, or what I find with students, and I'm in the same place too, is that we have like an identity crisis about like who we are, like why we're there, and like if we really matter. And so in those issues, especially with the multicultural aspect, it's a really, really big thing. And so people want to talk about that and really want to figure that out, because that identity has to do a lot with that multicultural part, and then also with your spirituality. And so it just all kind of collides. So what I like to do is kind of give them resources and be like, hey, like we're here for you if you ever want to talk, but you also have these other places to go to. And I think that's a great way that people, I felt like they have freedom to choose where they want to go and where they want to kind of have that conversation. I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah, so.
I go to the basketball court. I play basketball. So a couple of my students love to play basketball, so we started going. And then I'm like, oh, can I come? And it's fun because it's not my sport, so they get to see me like suck at it, and they love that. And another thing is this, I was almost going to tell this story. We play fishbowl. You guys ever played fishbowl or celebrity? You kind of put like famous people's names in, and we talk about it beforehand. Like everybody needs to know these people. So I'm like, I'm not allowed to put soccer players. I'm like, you're not allowed to put rappers. I don't know any of them. And then I get this person called Wiz Khalifa. Is that right? Is that
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was.
And I have no idea his music. So I start making Cheese Whiz. And I go, so now we call him Cheese Whiz. So it's just like this like really fun way of like knowing like we come from different places, but it's just we can make it really fun. So Cheese Whiz, now I listen to a little bit of his music. It's not bad.
Cheese Whiz.
But yeah, just, you know, it's finding the stuff that they like to do and being willing to try it, being willing to play. But then I make them come play soccer with me, and I kick their ass.
And what's the makeup of your group?
It's going to be, so it's a little bit stronger with kind of more black students. We've got about like 60% Latino, maybe 30% black, and 10% white.
In your group?
In my group, yeah.
Right.
I want to ask a question somewhat based on what the students of UNC Pembroke were talking about earlier today, which is co-sponsorship. I wonder whether in a lot of ministries we're seeing a lot of life from and interplay when you're able to work with a club on campus. I wonder if either of you have done any co-sponsorships with ethnic or racial specific clubs or other clubs that have caused more diversity in your group.
Yeah. For me, since I'm a student too, it's a weird thing being a student and then being given the role of peer minister. That's not really a peer minister, but really a campus minister. So for me, I'm a student too, so I'm a part of all these clubs. I'm part of a Latino in education or leading education to approach Latinos. I'm in leading Latinos in like something, and like all these different groups, like something Latino, and then Latino. Yeah. That's pretty much the clubs I'm in, because those are the clubs I resonate with, and those are the people that, like, I miss that family part. I miss having like those gatherings where we just get together, we talk, we have dances, we like just mess around, you know. I miss that, and so that's the place where I go to find that. And so what has happened is that me being a lot of people know that I'm a peer minister, and a lot of people know what I'm doing now because I talk to them, and I talk to everybody about this because I want to talk about it. It's energizing for me. And so they're like, wow, that's really interesting. And so they come, and I have a lot of students come from these different clubs, and they come and they experience it, and then they go back and they talk to other friends. And so in a way that, like, the clubs I am is kind of a way to promote what I'm doing because they all want to support me, and I support them too. So it's a big community within that. And that wasn't on purpose. That was just because we're a family, and we want to help each other in whatever aspect we can. And some of them are like, some of them are completely different. I have a few friends that are Jehovah's Witness, and we have a lot of hard conversations, but they still come to campus ministry, and they still support it because they know they can have those conversations there, and they're not ostracized for being Jehovah's Witness. Other people are like, oh my God, you're like Jehovah's Witness. But there we're like, okay, so you're Jehovah's Witness, like tell me about that, why, and let me tell you about why I'm Episcopalian or why I'm Catholic or blah, blah, blah. So in those ways, I've used those clubs I'm a part of to really connect. And then I also talk to different clubs, and I kind of talk to the leaders, and I'm like, hey, like this is what we're doing. You can come check it out, and I'll come check out your club. So it's a give and take, really, on those like co-sponsory kind of clubs.
Yeah, we've not done any co-sponsorships yet, but we do. I let my students kind of say, go be part of other clubs, and then bring them to lunch with us. We do like a weekly lunch where it's just having a good time, so they kind of bring their friends that way, and I get to connect with them. This year, though, with my 2 interns, they'll be going to a lot of club meetings. So yeah, it was really exciting to hear kind of some of the people you guys were willing to connect with, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly who we want to connect with too. So, right, there are no boundaries in that. Like, why do we limit ourselves?
In fact, you speaking about boundaries. The name of your ministry is called The Road.
The Road, and we have a new. So I was talking to my students. I'm like, what are we good at, right? We were talking about family, and she was talking about, we can talk about anything. She's like, there's no boundaries. I'm like, The Road, there's no boundaries. New tagline. Yeah. I don't know yet. I'm still figuring it out, but it could be cool.
I'm going to plug another question in. One of the conversations we've had in some other settings around campus ministry, Anthony, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about this as well, is there's some tension sometimes that arises between parents, especially first-generation immigrant parents, and children who are more enculturated in the United States, in Latino and in other immigrant community families, where the kids want to go off to college, and the parents don't have that as an expectation. They expect the kids to stay home until they get married, maybe sometimes even afterward. Yeah. And whether campus ministry and church can play a role in helping moderate and mediate and making parents feel comfortable. What could a campus ministry do to make parents feel comfortable dropping their son or daughter off at college?
Oh, what a great question.
Yeah.
Do y'all have any response to that?
Yeah. So going back to the club thing, I'm like really close friends with the vice president of multicultural something at the university. So we have a lot of talks about this because he's in charge of like going out to high schools and talking to parents and making sure they understand like this is a good thing that they're going to college. And so in having those conversations with him, he's been able to help me kind of like create resources for people in the ministry that are going through those problems. And it is a big deal because at least like three students that are in the ministry have gone through that. So I kind of plug them in. I'm like, hey, like, here's another way of doing this. So I've learned a lot. He's kind of like my mentor in a way for that kind of aspect, because I don't know anything about that because my parents were very for me going to college. And so in him giving me those resources, I think I've been able to like help those students' families really understand like this is a good thing. But then there's the other aspect of it where we have students come in, like Latino students come in, and like they're questioning all these things, and we're having all these great discussions, and they call their parents. They're like, hey, like we're talking about this, we're talking about the Trinity and stuff like this, and then the parents are like, you're doing what? Like what? Like I'm sorry, excuse me? Like you can't do that, you know? You have to stay in this faith, you know? And so then there's a torn between family and religion and spirituality. And so that's also another big topic that happens, you know? So that's my input, yeah.
I try to get invited to Sunday dinner because it's a win-win. Usually they cook really good pozole, which is like a really great soup, and then I get to know them. So once the parents kind of get to know me, then there's, in the familia mentality, just a whole new trust is found and formed. And so sometimes some of my students come from Houston, so I've driven out to Houston for art stuff, and I'm like, hey, let me come over for dinner. And so it's just really fun just getting to know the parents and kind of that, somewhat like that. We try to do it.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Mike, and that is a reality, is that in many Latino families, a young person is expected to stay, a young person is considered a youth until they're married. And so a young person is supposed to stay home until they're married. We don't have the expectation that when they're 18, they're out of the house. In fact, there's a lot of arguments and fights in people's homes about the fact that the young person wants to leave home, and it's like the whole family is shocked that, that this person's defying the family and wants to step out on their own. So going off to college seems like being a traitor to the family. So it often will take intervention. I remember many years ago when my older sister was going to go to college, all of my cousins came over and sat her down and explained and tried to convince her that she should go to school to the university in Houston instead of to Dallas because she shouldn't leave home. And that was many years ago, but that conversation is still held today in many of our Latino households. My wife, again, is a Guadalupe that I mentioned as a counselor at the college. She will go and visit sometimes with some of the parents and encourage them to, when their students are talking about transferring to a four-year college, that means that it's not going to be resident. That means they're going to have to leave home, and there's a lot of conflict. The parents don't understand why they have to leave. Why can't they go to school nearby and stay at home? And so that's an issue that comes up. And that's a cultural thing. Again, some generations down the road, that won't be such a big deal. But today, it's still a big deal for a young person to move out. Because it does seem, it's not about, it's not that the parents are against the student bettering themselves or getting an education. It just seems like it's a slap against the family. And they don't understand why this pull or why this desire or why they can't figure some other way to do the education and still stay home so they can still be part of that unit. So that's where campus ministry can be so helpful. I don't know of any ministries that are doing anything about this, but it would be fabulous if this is a conversation and you had some sort of a thought and plan as to how you might be able to help Latino students who have moved away and who are probably being tugged constantly to go back home. So how can you help provide community and a sense of familia in the new setting, and how can you help that student, with the family back home? Those would be some pastoral issues that I think could be of vital importance.
This is a question for Chris. I'm interested in that you're a peer minister at your university, and I presume that you're a peer minister working with the campus minister who's there. Is that right? Or
it's a little complicated.
Okay. Well, so my question then is how could the campus minister or be really supportive of having a peer minister, because I'm struck by the fact that you're in student clubs because you're a student.
Right.
So how can campus ministers leverage students and students' participation in these different groups? I think it's especially important in terms of reaching person of color groups because there's peer-to-peer trust in a way that may not always exist if that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to explain my situation, there's no really definition for a peer minister in the diocese. So when I came into the job, it was kind of like, hey, you have this job, you have this title of a peer minister, go do whatever that means. And so when I came in, as I said earlier, the campus minister was kind of just chilling in a way. And so he's kind of stepping back, and he's been doing this ministry. This ministry has been there for at least, I think, 5 years before I came in. And so he's kind of stepping back because I feel like he's probably worn out or torn out. And so he's stepping back from his role as a campus minister and kind of giving me that position. And I've talked to him before as a way to explain, like, as a peer minister, it's not my job to do all this stuff that I'm doing. It's my job to talk to my peers and to have that one-on-one relationship, but it's not my job to create daily meetings and to create all this other stuff that I'm doing. And he's like, but you're a peer, and this is what you should be doing, and all that stuff is your job. And so not having a definition for what a peer minister is, and not really having a clear definition of what a campus minister is, there's been confusion on what really is going on. And then could you explain your question a little bit again? Did you ask how can a campus minister help students get involved in clubs?
No, actually, I think you answered it for me, because you answered it negatively. I mean, I think in the sense that what could a campus minister do to help you be a better peer minister? I think one that I heard you just say is a clear job description.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Or some sort of description of what it means to be a peer minister, and some like clarity around like so thank you.
Definitely.
Take them out to eat a lot.
Hi. Thanks for Mike for raising that issue. There's actually a term for it in some of the campus ministries. One of the campus ministries in our diocese, San Jose State, actually had a listening post, and it was mostly dealing with, interestingly, Asian American students who were fully expected to go to college, but were also fully expected to get straight A's, and also fully expected to be home, and going home to a very culturally traditional home environment, which was completely at odds with what they were experiencing in college. And it began to be studied, and there's actually a term for it. It's called a cultural double bind. And that can be Googled. There's work being done on it, and it's something that I've attempted at Cal Poly to enter into conversation with. So it's a different, and I hadn't heard about it in a Latino context. So, but it's out there, and students actually commit suicide over these issues of being pulled in these two different directions. So this idea of being a ministry of presence and being on campus and listening for these stories and making appropriate referrals maybe to the counseling departments can be a big part of what we do. But there is an awareness of this issue, and it's out there.
Wow.
Thanks.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's a good term, and I will follow up on that. In the Latino cultures, I don't think that the suicide rate is very high. Normally what happens is that the family wins, and the young person just goes back home. And sometimes they just stop studying. That's the sort of the loss or the cost of that culture bind.